Mr. President, last week, in another landmark decision, the Supreme Court rejected President Trump's effort to repeal deportation programs for dreamers and young immigrants who came to the United States as children. In an opinion by Chief Justice John Roberts, an opinion which I have here, the court held that the President's decision was to rescind the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program was, quote, arbitrary and capricious. It was 10 years ago, 10 years, that I joined Republican Senator Dick Lugar of Indiana on a bipartisan basis to call on President Obama to use his legal authority to protect dreamers from deportation. President Obama responded by creating DACA, which provides temporary, 2 years at a time, protection from deportation to dreamers if they register with the government, pay a substantial fee, pass a criminal background check. More than 800,000 dreamers came forward to sign up for DACA. It unleashed the full potential of these young men and women who are contributing to America as teachers and nurses and soldiers and small business owners. And more than 200,000 DACA recipients are now officially characterized by our government as essential critical infrastructure workers. I didn't make that up. It was the definition of President Trump's own Department of Homeland Security. 200,000 of the 800,000 DACA, essential critical infrastructure workers. Among these essential workers are 41,700 DACA recipients in healthcare, doctors, intensive care nurses, paramedics, respiratory therapists. But on September the 5th, 2017, President Trump repealed DACA. Hundreds of thousands of dreamers faced losing their work permits and being deported to countries they barely remember. Thankfully, the Supreme Court has now rejected that effort. Unfortunately, the President, through his tweets, has responded by attacking the court and threatening the DACA protectees again. But Chief Justice Roberts has made it clear it's not going to be easy for the President to carry out his threat. The Chief Justice wrote that in order to repeal DACA, the administration must consider, quote, accommodating particular reliance interests. Here's what it means. In order to repeal DACA, the administration must consider the interests of those who have come to rely on the program. This includes not just DACA recipients, but their American citizen children, the schools where DACA recipients study and teach, and the employers who invested time and money in training them. Today, I'm calling on President Trump to do the right thing for our nation and not make another effort to repeal DACA. Instead, the President should direct the Department of Homeland Security to reopen DACA. Since 2017, when the President announced the end of DACA, the program has been closed to new applicants. As a result, there are tens of thousands of dreamers who've never been able to apply for their opportunity under DACA. Now, Congress also has a responsibility. Last week, President Trump tweeted, and I quote, "I've wanted to take care of DACA recipients better than the do-nothing Democrats, but for 2 years they refused to negotiate," end of quote. Here's the reality. President Trump has rejected numerous bipartisan offers to protect the dreamers. One example. On February 15th, 2018, the Senate considered a bipartisan amendment offered by Republican Senator Mike Rounds, Independent Senator Angus King, including a path to citizenship for dreamers. A bipartisan majority of senators supported the amendment, but it fell short of the 60 votes needed to pass the Senate because of the Trump administration's opposition. On that same day, the Senate voted on the President's immigration proposal, and that amendment failed by a bipartisan majority of 39 to 60. In other words, we came close to 60 in a bipartisan effort to answer the President's challenge. His response legislation received 39 votes for and 60 against in the Senate. On June 4th, 2019, the House of Representatives passed H.R. 6, the Dream and Promise Act, legislation that would give dreamers a path to citizenship with a strong bipartisan vote. The Dream and Promise Act has now been pending in the Senate on the desk of Senator McConnell for more than 1 year. Yesterday, I sent a letter signed by all 47 Democratic senators calling on Senator McConnell to immediately schedule a vote on the Dream and Promise Act. The President has challenged us. Do something legislatively. Do something, Congress. Senator McConnell It's within your power for us to do something and to do it quickly. Over the years, I've come to the floor of the Senate many times to tell the simple stories of these dreamers. These stories show what's at stake when we consider the fate of DACA. Today, I want to tell you about Diana Jimenez. The 123rd dreamer whose story I've told on the Senate floor. Came to the United States from Mexico at the age of 6. Grew up in Laredo, Texas. She wrote to me, and here's what she said about her childhood. Growing up in the United States was both great and challenging. I loved the people, the culture, the language. At times, it was also hard. Assimilating and learning English, a totally new language for me, came with its setbacks. Still, my neighbors, my teachers, and the community around me were very welcoming. I'll never forget that. When Diana was 13, her mother was admitted to the hospital. Because her mother didn't speak English, Diana had to serve as a translator. This experience inspired her to become a nurse. Diana attended Texas A&M. She was on the dean's list, offered a scholarship for academic accomplishment, but she had to turn it down because she's undocumented. She went on to earn her degree in nursing and history along with a minor in economics. Thanks to DACA, now works as an operating room nurse on the cardiovascular, cardiothoracic specialty team in a hospital in Austin, Texas. She's married, she has a baby girl. Here's what Diana says about DACA. DACA means opportunity to me. I'm glad I live in a country that gives me the chance to better myself if I want to. There are doors and opportunities for the taking all around me, and DACA is the key to my success. Now Diana is on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic in a state which is seeing a dramatic increase in infection. She's worried about infecting her little girl. And here's what she says about her experience. I've come in contact with patients infected with COVID multiple times, and I'll continue to do so as long as I'm doing my work. Even though this pandemic has affected both my personal and professional life, I will continue to do my job as a nurse. I want to thank Diana Jimenez for her service. She is, in fact, a health hero. She's a DACA health hero. She is putting herself and her family at risk to save American lives. Can we ask for anything more? She shouldn't have to worry about whether a decision by this administration will lead to her deportation. As long as I'm a United States Senator, I'm going to continue to come to the floor to tell the stories of people just like Diana Jimenez. It would be an American tragedy to deport this brave and talented nurse who is saving lives in the midst of this pandemic. We must ensure that Diana and hundreds of thousands of others in our essential workforce are not stopped from working when the need for their service has never been greater. And we must give them the chance they deserve to become American citizens. Would America be better if Diana Jimenez was returned to Mexico? If this nurse left the operating room at that hospital? If she decided that she could no longer stay in the United States and was forced, deported, to leave in the midst of this pandemic? Of course not. Every American knows that, Democrat, Republican, or independent. Why don't we stand together and remind the president that there are values worth fighting for, and one of them is to make sure that this land of opportunity also has room for the immigrants who bring so much to our shores. I yield the floor.